Okay, formatting then. So we just go through these points individually. So hopefully you can see from the way I've presented this paragraph that if you look at the end of each sentence, it's not in what we call alignment, it's what we call ragged. So formatting using a justified edge is that each of the paragraphs either side of the start and the end of the sentence is in alignment. Alright, it's quite a pedantic thing, but it looks neat, it looks tidy, and you've formatted your work correctly. So when you hand in your assessment, I should be able to see double line spacing, Arial text, size 12 font, justified edges for your paragraphs, and then obviously page numbers and your student ID in the header and the footer. So that's an example of what I mean by justified edges. The paragraphs, they're all in alignment, it looks neat, it looks tidy, your work is formatted correctly. Okay, introduction. So I've just taken a paragraph from a piece of work that I've written, which funnily enough is around fundamental movement skills. So this was looking at fundamental movement skills of young children in primary school. So part of a study that I did, we highlighted that before 11 and 12-year-olds go to secondary school, they haven't got appropriate fundamental movement skills. So funnily enough, around the topic of the assessment that you guys are doing. So you can see how I've developed the introduction. I am providing a context. So I'm providing a context that suggests that physical activity in young children is declining. However, physical activity is linked into fundamental movement skills. So there's a relationship between fundamental movement skills and physical activity. And I've linked that into lifelong physical fitness. So you can see within the introduction, I'm trying to set the scene. I'm trying to give some context to it. So I'm suggesting that young children aren't physically active enough, that there is a link between fundamental movement skills and physical activity, and that fundamental movement skills have been shown to be important to lifelong physical fitness and physical activity. Hence, if we can improve fundamental movement skills, then that should have some bearing on how we improve physical activity. So what you need to do within your assessment is set the scene within the first paragraph, which is your introduction. And again, you can see how I've presented it. You can see how I've linked the sentences together. You can see how I've referenced. I'm just trying to give you an example of how to present your work better, how to structure your work better. In terms of linking paragraphs, so if we go back to the previous paragraph there, hopefully if you read through the first 2-3 paragraphs, you can see how I'm trying to continue the theme. So I said on a lot of your work that you handed in for the first assessment, I talked about continuity, transition between paragraphs. Paragraphs shouldn't exist in isolation. So if I'm talking about football in the first paragraph, the second paragraph shouldn't be about cricket, because there's no relationship between the two paragraphs. If I was talking about football in the United Kingdom, and then my second paragraph talks about football in South America, then there's a link between the two paragraphs. So again, if you look at what is on the slide, I'm trying to link the paragraph and the themes together. And if you look at the type of language I use within those sentences, so what I call connecting words like significantly, therefore, we go on to the next paragraph, critically. So I'm trying to compare and contrast what the literature has said. And I'm also trying to make sure there's continuity between each of the paragraphs. So I carry on the theme. I develop the theme. And that's what you've got to try and do with your next assessment. So again, if you look at this paragraph, you look at the words that I'm using at the start of each sentence. So critically, therefore, however, crucially, as a result of. So using those types of connecting words also allows you not only to connect the paragraphs together, but it also allows you to try and link the sentences together. Okay, so it's important when you do the next assessment, you start to think about the paragraph shouldn't exist in isolation. You present a theme in a paragraph. You develop that theme. You might conclude the theme at the end of the paragraph, but you also try and link to the next paragraph as well, so that there's some continuity and progression throughout each paragraph that you write. Also, there's some good work which structured your work correctly and formatted correctly. But also you've got to think about, within a paragraph, how you construct sentences. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not teaching you to be authors. You're not going to go on and write books or something. You might decide you're going to go on and write books and journals or whatever, but it's not about writing books. It's about having good study skills and having good writing skills. If you're doing a university degree, you have to be able to write. It's an academic degree. So we've got standards that we're judged against. And it's important that you demonstrate those standards through your work. So, all right, how do I construct a paragraph? Well, it starts with a lead-in sentence. So if I'm looking at the marking criteria, okay, so let's say the marking criteria, it says, discuss what fundamental movement skills are. So my first sentence really should introduce the key theme, which is fundamental movement skills and what they are. So I need to introduce the topic in the first sentence, which then allows me then to develop that theme through the paragraph. If the marking criteria that I'm looking at is describe what lifelong physical fitness is and how it is linked to fundamental movement skills, well, the first sentence, the key theme, should incorporate something about lifelong physical fitness and justifying what lifelong physical fitness is. And then, throughout the paragraph then, I can start to link in how fundamental movement skills are important to lifelong physical fitness. So, all I'm trying to get you to think about, how you construct a paragraph. What does it look like? How do I start it? How do I develop it? And how do I finish it? And within that paragraph and within each sentence, you've got what we call connectives. And those connectives are just connecting words that allow some continuity and flow and progression to what you write. So a sentence shouldn't be seen as something that just says something and then the next sentence goes on to something completely different. Sentences should enhance and continue and develop the theme of what you're talking about. So for example, these are some of the connectives. You can look up other connectives, but these are the types of words that you can use at the start of a sentence. I wrote on some of your work, don't start with a, personally I don't like it when people start sentences with a reference. So Smith 1995 says, because it is very abrupt, it is very descriptive, and it tends to make sentences exist in isolation. If you use words like therefore, nevertheless, in contrast, in comparison, critically, so you would say significantly, Smith 1995 suggested fundamental movement skills underpin lifelong physical fitness. And then your next sentence could be, However, or nevertheless, it has been demonstrated that, so you're comparing, you're contrasting, you are critically analysing. So connecting words help you to develop that critical analysis and discussion.